The opposite of sad is das, and das not good. What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Chris, this is 4K Motoring, and behind me is our 2018 Nissan Titan XD. This does have the 5.6 liter gas V8, not the Cummins diesel, and we have a problem. Thanks to my handy Blue Driver OBD-II reader, this is a Bluetooth unit that connects to your phone. Really handy, probably my favorite unit I've ever tried. We've been getting a reoccurring error with the truck. It is a Bank 1 Sensor 1 O2 sensor short is what it's telling me, that the Bank 1 Sensor 1 O2 sensor is not reading, so we have a replacement. I'm hoping that it's just a wiring issue we might be able to correct when we get underneath, but either way, we went ahead from Rock Auto and got a replacement, only about $100, so really not a big deal. What we ordered was a Denso O2 sensor, and there is the model number for you guys to look at. Hopefully that's helpful to you. Per the Rock Auto website, this does fit the Sensor 1 position for Bank 1 or Bank 2, so it really shouldn't be that big deal. We're going to go ahead and get underneath the truck and see what we can find. Okay, we're under the truck, and I can see from under the, basically under the driver's seat, I can see our two O2 sensors. Here's our front drive shaft, here's our transmission, and right up there is going to be our Bank 1 Sensor 1 O2 sensor, right before our catalytic converter. And we can see our converter here. Just past our converter, there is another O2 sensor right there, and that's going to be our Sensor 2, our downstream sensor, and that one's reading fine. Overall, we do have a pretty big frame rail that's right here, and some heat shielding from this catalytic converter that's going to be in the way, but I think we're going to be able to get to this sensor pretty easily and get it plugged in. So let's go ahead and give that a try. To give you guys another view, right behind the driver's side front tire, you can actually see this thing. Now this is a Titan XD, so I don't know how different this is to the regular Titan, but right behind the wheel, there is the Sensor 1 for Bank 1 on the driver's side, passenger side will be Bank 2, right there. Now obviously make sure the vehicle is cold before you do this, because this exhaust gets really hot. So this is our sensor right here, and I apologize if you can't quite hear me or see anything because I'm using the GoPro. The wire comes up and there are a couple little tabs like you see right there in front of you, and the wire just kind of slips in. You lift that tab up a little bit, the wire will slip out, and then there's a second one kind of in the back. I don't know if you guys can see that. I'll try and zoom in on that over there. So that's that. The plug itself, this plug right here, pulls down, and it is located right on the other side of the steering column here. I'm trying to get over to it. So right back there is where the plug plugs into. If you can kind of see that, I'm trying to expose it. I'll hopefully highlight it here for you. That's where it plugs into. A little pressure on the top, pull down, this thing comes right out, and we have basically our sensor free. We just have to work on getting that out, putting the new one in, getting it plugged up, running the wires back, and that is as simple as the job is. I did go ahead and take the inner fender liner out because I figured that's going to be the easier way to do this. It took a couple screws. There's a couple Phillips screws that are around the outside of the actual fender flares, and then inside there's a couple little plastic clips, look just like that. And that was as difficult as this job was. And with help of the impact, we've got our sensor out. There it is. So pretty cool. Our new one comes with some anti-seize I already put on the threads. So we'll go ahead and get that in hand tight, and then we'll put the O2 wrench socket on it. Hopefully we won't have to turn it too much, and get it all plugged back up. So there it is. It is installed, and we have our new wire. It's all black and shiny. We've got our little connector right there we're going to run the wires through, and then the second one there, and then get it plugged up. I'm going to try and position this GoPro somewhere where you can see it. You just push the wires right in here to these things. Very easy. They don't come back out. And we'll go ahead and plug this in before we get too far along. It's got some wings on it, so it only fits in one way, and it snaps closed. And then the remainder of this wire goes right up here to another holder. Well, overall that was pretty easy. There wasn't a whole lot required to that other than perhaps a specialized socket. Again, I'll leave the link for the Denso O2 sensor that I used and the specialized socket you need for the O2 wrenches down in the description below if you guys are interested. I did compare the old sensor to the new sensor, and the labeling on the OEM sensor that came out of the truck was Denso. So I believe the replacement I got from Rock Auto, right about $100, is the OEM component for this truck and should mesh well, hopefully. Overall, it was pretty easy. We have the truck on ramps just for a little bit easier access, so I didn't really have to bend over, but realistically, this truck can stay on the ground for this job without an issue, at least for the Bank 1 sensors. I went ahead, as you guys saw, and took off this inner cover here, just for a little bit easier access around to that sensor. But again, realistically, you don't have to do that. It's gonna be kind of a pain to fish through some of those wires, but overall, it is not required. So now we're gonna go ahead and start up this truck and clear that code just to see how well that sensor really worked. All right, let's go ahead and hit the button. So now our check engine light should still be on because we had those error codes, but as our blue driver kicks on, let's go ahead and pair to that. Okay, we're going to make sure we read the codes just to know what was going on in the truck. So again, here was all the codes that we had, P0546 and P2081. It's the same code all the way through. So let's go ahead and clear that code. And we do have the permanent codes. Hopefully that'll clear our check engine light, which it did. And we'll go ahead and drive it around to see if there's any issues. Well, for those of you following along, you guys probably realized before I did that I ordered the wrong part. Now, I thought this was going to be an O2 sensor thing. When I see Bank 1, Sensor 1, I just assumed, hey, this is an O2 sensor problem. I didn't imagine that a gas truck had an exhaust gas temperature sensor, which I'm not sure what data is gained from that, hot or cold. I don't know why you need a sensor for that. But evidently that is the fault, and apparently from what I read, that is not an uncommon fault with these trucks. Is that particular sensor. So I went ahead and ordered a new replacement. These are kind of hard to find online. There's a couple companies that have them, but they seem to be running out of stock pretty quickly, so you may have to search through a couple retailers to actually find something in stock and available to you. We're still going to be working on Bank 1, Sensor 1, so I'm going to go underneath and see if we can figure out exactly where this sensor is. I believe it's really close to where that O2 sensor that we replaced was. There's our temperature sensor right there. If you guys can see that. I'll try and make sure the camera focuses. That's it. So that's all we've got to replace. It is kind of on the inside of the exhaust manifold towards the center of the truck. And from underneath, I appear to have unrestricted access to that sensor. Here is the part that we were replacing. There is the part number 273-10441, supposedly for this truck. Okay, we were able to get that sensor out of there. It did take a little bit of effort. If you guys can see this thing here, the actual bolt on the end really had a hard time, and it does come out of here. So you guys can kind of see that. It's a 14 millimeter is the overall size. I tried using just a box end wrench, and you guys can see how that just rounded off there. Really, you have to get more than two sides of this thing. It is kind of seized in there. There is some possibly Loctite or rust on the threads there, so you're gonna have to break that free before it comes out. What I ended up doing was just cutting the wires from it since they were broken anyway. That way I could fit a 14 millimeter socket over top, and then it just came right out with no issue. There's not a lot of space in there, so clearance is kind of an issue, but you can get a 14 millimeter socket and a smaller ratchet in there to get that thing out of there. We're going to go ahead and disconnect our sensor. So this is the plug right here. You can see it's got a push style connector that releases. Again, we remove the fender liner, and I'll get you guys in as close as I can here. So I'm going to push in, hopefully have this thing refocus. That is our clip that we've got to get out of there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and remove that. Like I said, you can get to it without removing the fender liner, but it's a whole lot easier with that fender liner gone. So realistically, this was all pretty easy. Once you're able to break that sensor free, it comes right out of there. Space is a little bit tight, but it is definitely doable without a whole lot of disassembly. Removing that inner fender liner absolutely makes this job easier, whether you're doing the O2 sensor or that temperature sensor. I would highly recommend doing it. It is so quick, so easy, and saves you a bunch of frustration. Okay, truck is completely back together now. Everything is buttoned up. Everything is connected, routed the way it's supposed to be. I made sure the radius in that wire was not super sharp, so hopefully it didn't break anything. I don't know if that was the issue or not. We're gonna go ahead and start the truck up, see if our blue driver detects any issues, and see if we can clear the codes and keep them from coming back. So immediately, we still have our check engine light that's been on. Okay, we've gone through with our blue driver and clear out all the codes. This is what we're left with. We have our two permanent codes that are still stored here. Our check engine light is resolved, and per this, the permanent codes apparently cannot be cleared by any scanner. The vehicle will automatically clear them when it determines the issue is resolved. So we're going to drive this for a day or two, make sure we get the exhaust up to temperature so the sensor should be working and the truck reads it correctly. As long as that happens, we'll have a successful repair. Well guys, as always, thanks for watching 4K Motoring. Hope you enjoyed this fix. If it's something that you are suffering with as well, these same codes, hopefully that you've seen how easy it is to do this and you can do it yourself, save a lot of money, don't take it to anybody else. Each of these sensors, both the O2 sensors and the temperature sensor, are both about $100 each, depending where you get it. I'll have links to all that stuff that I used down in the description below. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more Titan content.